Very nice. Hello, all of you. It's great to see you. So great to see you. So I want to start, it's wonderful to see you, wonderful to have you here, and I'm excited to talk with you. And I wanted to start by congratulating you on writing a book about dieting that is funny and entertaining and totally smart, which is not, I don't think, an easy thing to do.
Well, thanks. It's the only book that I've written like 8 that people seem to want me to write, you know? No one wanted a book on atheism or cheating at poker, but when I lost this huge amount of weight, which I did not lose as some sort of stunt nor for vanity, it was strictly for health, many people would come up to me because I was known and on TV as a fat fuck, and said, how did you do this? So I had to kind of, I felt that if I put it down in a book, it'd be a little easier than telling each person individually.
Right.
And
a little more efficient.
This is a very good time to say, and this is very important. If you take, and I'm going to speak freely about what I believe about this, but if you take medical advice from a Las Vegas magician, you are an asshole and you deserve to die. Now I will speak freely with my medical opinions.
Terrific. Okay, so I love what you write in the book. You say, I know that big parts of this might be bullshit, but I joined the cult, which is a surprising thing to hear from someone who is a self-proclaimed atheist who hosted a show called Bullshit, where you really tried to oust a lot of, or out a lot of charlatans and hucksters and maybe cult leaders. But so talk about that. What was the cult?
There's a piece of information that completely blows my mind, and that is placebos work even if you know they're placebos. I don't even know how they tested that. What was the control group on that? But they do. And my friend Ray, who's Ray Cronice, who I met when he was at NASA, he's the one that took me on the Vomit Comet where I was weightless. So he's been involved in my weight for a long while. He's been a friend for many years. As a matter of fact, if anybody saw a movie I did called Tim's Vermeer, where Tim Jennison is building Vermeer's studio in a warehouse in San Antonio, Texas. Ray is the one driving the forklift, knocking down the wall in that. Ray started this program with some real scientists to try to get people to lose weight for health purposes in a different way. And this would never go out to the public. They'd only run it with like a few hundred people, which might as well be zero when you're doing scientific testing. And so this book is very odd because one of the guinea pigs, one of the first people through this, was me, and I wrote a book. So the popular book came out before the book that actually backs it up. The book that will actually be peer-reviewed, I mean, this book is also peer-reviewed, but I'm a Vegas performer, so my peers are Carrot Top. But peer-reviewed by scientists will be out after this. And one of the things that Cray Ray, as I call him, was discovering was that a lot of these techniques that are used for very unpleasant purposes can actually be used with the subject's full knowledge you're using them. So Ray would say to me, you're not allowed to talk to anybody about what you're doing. First rule of Fight Club is don't talk about Fight Club. You're not allowed to get support from your family and friends and talk to them. I'm going to cut you off from the people you usually talk to. You're also going to take everything I say as absolute gospel. And you will go with that, even when I'm not sure of what I'm saying. Yeah. I'm going to say it as though I was sure, and you're going to believe it. And the strange thing is, you can make a decision to fall for all this bullshit while knowing it's bullshit, and it still seems to work on some sort of very deep lizard brain level. Yeah. And I found that really fascinating. And I followed all the rules. As a matter of fact, in the 3.5 months that I was going through this with Ray, I did not vary off the program.
You would call him like he was your sponsor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would call him on everything. I did not make one mistake the whole time. And to give you an idea of how effective this was, my average, and the word average is really important, my average for this time was 0.9 pounds a day is what I lost. I say 110. I was on it for 3 months. Those numbers don't really sync up because I did lose some of the weight beforehand. But when I was actually losing the weight, and all sorts of things that Ray discovered are, you can't say counterintuitive because they are intuitive, but they're countercultural.
Yeah.
Which is, if you want to gain a lot of weight, frequent high protein meals and lots of exercise. That's bodybuilding. And that works, and it's working to make a lot of people very, very fat. For the time that I was losing the weight, I did not exercise. As soon as I lost the weight, got to target weight, I started right away exercising. Exercise is very, very good, but not when you're trying to lose weight. I did not worry at all about protein, and I ate meals very infrequently. I mean, even now, I try to go about 16 hours before first calorie after I've eaten. So I ate last night about 1 a.m. and I haven't eaten since.
That's a long stretch.
Yeah, but you get really used to it,
Yeah.
and you also learn when there's a different kind of hunger you get, or at least I get. And once again, all of this is very, very personal. So I'm not saying this is what you should do or what will work for you, but I found when I was eating fat, salt, and sugar all the time, that going 2 or 3 hours without food caused headaches and caused my stomach to grumble and was very, very uncomfortable. I find now that I eat whole plants and extremely low salt, sugar, and oil, that after 15 hours without eating, I get this wonderful feeling of well-being and comfort, and I don't ever feel the hunger I felt when I was eating the other diet. Now, there's all sorts of theories about microbiome changing, and there's words thrown around like addiction, which I don't like to use because I don't think anybody knows what it means. But there certainly is, for me, a very, very different relationship with the word hunger than there was when I ate differently.
I like, too, that you write in the book, and I think it's something that we all could use to think about. I mean, essentially what happened in this sort of maybe more extreme approach to dieting, something that seemed really unorthodox, which I'm sure was appealing in some ways, was that you took your food goggles off. Like, you started sort of seeing food culture and the kind of world of food you've been living in and how you'd been eating it in a way that you might not have if you hadn't decided to eat potatoes for 2 weeks.
Yeah, there's a very strange thing, which is I've always known that I wasn't particularly good at moderation, but I came to realize that not only am I not good at it, I don't respect it. If you're good at moderation, I think you're an asshole. The people that I love and respect are not good at moderation. And I don't mean to go into quoting the famous Kerouac, but it's very much like that. And it's very, very funny that I didn't identify theologically with what all Americans did. I don't watch the TV that's the most popular. I don't listen to the music that's the most popular. I don't read the books that are the most popular. And yet I was eating absolutely straight down the middle of what was the most popular. And when my doctor said, and I was wicked sick. My doctor said that they were going to do a stomach sleeve on me because I was so fat and they couldn't get my blood pressure down. When he said that, what he offered me was that we were going to do something extreme. We were going to cut me open because of this. So all of a sudden, this operation was scheduled a few months down the line. All of a sudden, I was given this freedom to go crazy. And what Ray offered me was something that was really, really hard to do. And my conversation with Ray went like this. And the beauty of this, to my personality, is so pure. I said to Ray, the doctor says I got to lose like 30 pounds. And he said, why not lose 100? 100 would be better. And I said, well, do you have an easy way for me to do that? And he said, no, it'll be really hard. It'll be really, really hard, and you'll have to really work hard, and you'll be real proud of it when you're done. But you worked hard on juggling, you worked hard on magic, you worked hard playing bass, you work hard in day-to-day life. Your dad worked hard, your mom worked hard, everything they respect. Why the fuck do you want to do this the easy way? And it was this incredible revelation of, wow, this could be something that I can focus on and really be proud of and do it in kind of a puritanical mind over matter way. Instead of having a piece of salmon this big, why not try having a piece of salmon this big? All of that stuff had never worked for me for a moment. But going crazy, and to give you an idea of how crazy we went, for the first 2 weeks I did what's called a mono diet. And the idea of a mono diet is to take away food as entertainment, take away food socially, and get you away from the advertising. You eat just one thing. Now that one thing you eat can be any whole plant. It could be brown rice, it could be broccoli, it could be beans, but we chose potatoes because potatoes are funny. And I thought that eating nothing but plain potatoes, they have to be plain.
What's funny about potatoes?
You just said the word potato.
Potato? You say potato, I say
funny.
potato.
It's just a funny thing. It's
lump,
a lump of potato. And saying I'm eating nothing but, and it also solves the entertainment problem because they're not entertaining.
Yeah.
It solves the social problem because of the whole time, the 2 weeks I was eating nothing but potatoes, not one person called me and said, hey man, just landed in Vegas, let's go get a potato. And he also doesn't let you eat at meal times or socially. You just eat when you're really, really hungry, you have a potato. And it's amazing. And I described this in the book, and I've described it to friends, and nobody believes me. But I'm telling you, it is true. I spent 2 weeks eating nothing but potatoes. I lost 16 pounds in those 2 weeks. I felt so much better. Day 3 and 4 are horrible. They're awful. You feel terrible. And then day 5, you get this wonderful feeling that you get. You're essentially fasting. The potatoes aren't giving you that much caloric content. So you're essentially fasting. But then on day 15, Cray Ray said, you can have a piece of corn on the cob. Have some corn on the cob. And my taste buds had been so used to, habituated to salt, sugar, and fat, it was like I couldn't taste anymore. And I had that corn, and I'm telling you, it was the most intense, wonderful flavors I'd ever had. I never realized that corn was sweet. I never realized that corn was salty. And this is without butter, without anything on it. I never realized that there's all these complex flavors. It's kind of like you've been listening to nothing but 3-chord rock and roll at deafening volumes. And you love it, because 3-chord rock and roll at deafening volumes is wonderful. Right. And then all of a sudden you decide to turn it down, and playing there is Miles Davis and Stravinsky, and there's all these wonderful experiences that were always there. You were just covering them up. And that first piece of corn, I knew that that there was a huge change that happened. And the change, and I'm embarrassed to say this because has been mentioned other places, I've said it once or twice before, I'm an atheist. So I don't believe in any sort of mind-brain separation. Mm-hmm. I believe that what we experience is chemical. I really do believe that. And yet, if you'd have asked me when I was fat, do you think being fat affects your mood? I would have said, well, of course not. There's me, there's this pen, and there's this body. Well, that's separating out everything we know. That is the most non-atheist thing you can say. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of embarrassed because as his weight dropped off me, my mood changed, and I smiled more. And I say this with a great deal of shame. I have 2 young children. They're 10 and 11 years old. They noticed I was happier. And I thought I was always thrilled to be around them.
Well, you could play with them more as well.
Much more, sure. But I always forced myself to do it. But I didn't know they knew I was pushing to do that. Right. And I didn't know they saw right through me, which, of course, your children always see through you on everything. But I was so amazed that I did it because I had to get my blood pressure under control. And there were all these other things. Among the most surprising was enjoying food. Yeah. I used to eat anything I wanted, which turned out to be three things: fat, sugar, and salt. And when I stopped eating those things, when I limited my diet, all of a sudden, the food I ate, I now eat hundreds of things, and I now experience all these different tastes. It was a remarkable thing. And I should also say that many of my friends, and a lot of people who've heard me talk about this, have done the same thing and have had very, very similar results. We're very eager for Ray to get his book out so that you're not just hearing this from a nut, but you can actually hear it from people who are scientists.
Right, you can read the science. So, I mean, it is interesting because you do talk like you're a convert in a way, right? And there were parts of this that you didn't fully understand and parts that were maybe a little concerning. Like you had this lightheadedness when you were doing the show, and they never could really figure out why that was happening.
Still don't know.
But nonetheless, you stuck with it.
I stuck with it, and it's really been really fun.
It's made you happy.
Fun.
It's made
and
you
I should
happier.
also say, and I forgive me for doing all these disclaimers. I'm not doing them for legal reasons. I really am doing them for moral reasons, because I really am a Las Vegas magician. I'm not a scientist. I don't have any information on this. But I will say I also had my doctor, who I told all about this. He talked to Ray. He had all the information. And when you lose weight this quickly, I was on 6 top doses of strong blood pressure meds. So as I started losing weight, my blood pressure came down. The very medicines that were stopping me from stroking out became poison. So I had to take my blood pressure every day, and there were times I was using a Withing scale and blood pressure cuff that sent the information instantly to my doctor as soon as I took it. I had times when I got pretty much emergency calls from my doctor saying, "Do not take that pill tonight. Your blood pressure will crash." So what I was doing was very much extreme. You know, when you read books on diet, it's usually all about making it easy and fun and safe, and what this was hardcore crazy. I mean, this was punk rock. This was not the Carpenters.
Well, punk rock, like
to use a contemporary example.
Right, very contemporary. This was not emo music. This was punk. The extreme side of your personality and that punk rock, that was the term that people used to describe what you and Teller were doing, and even before that, when there were 3 of you, the kind of magic you were doing and the show you were putting on. Where does that come from for you? I mean, how did you develop that personality? Was it your parents? You said they were super hard workers like you are, but what drew you to the extreme, to the unconventional, to like trying to like turn things over?
You know, I don't think we have access to that. I just don't think we know what makes us who we are. You know, I was from a small town. The first person I ever met in show business was me.
How was that?
Well, I thought that, Steve Martin said, if you desperately want to be in show business and have no talent, you should become a magician. And he's exactly right.
You're not kind to magicians in this book.
I'm not. But I mean, it's all done with a great deal of love. The truth of the matter is that magic can be very easily a way to hide behind the trick. Because magic tricks done badly still have some interest. You have built-in irony without having to have any wit. Because you have automatically something is different than what it appears to be, and everyone knows that. And that automatically gives you a fascination, even with no personality, no clever turn of phrase, no nothing. Now, I did not like magicians when I was young, because I've always been obsessed with lying. And I always thought that lying was wrong. And it took me a long time to realize that when you put a proscenium around something, those lies can become art.
Yeah.
And that's a very hard thing for me. It was a hard thing for me to realize. So I became a juggler, because a juggler is the opposite of a magician. Magicians are always trying to do things the easy way. Jugglers will try to do it harder. I would learn my entire routine and then learn it all left-handed. And then I would say, well, I can do this juggling pattern for a long time. I wonder if I can go 2 hours without missing. You stand there, do the same stupid shit for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And that was my personality. So I learned to juggle when I was 12, and then I would do, I'd get $5 to do a show at a nursing home, and then we would do like, the overnights at the YMCA. We would be the entertainment, and I found out that with this Mike Motion, who is the MacArthur Grant juggler, probably the most important juggler of the 20th century, which is the definition of damning with faint praise. I taught him to juggle, and he went on to be great. I went on not to. But we discovered when we did our shows that we started out doing like 19 minutes of juggling, and I would do 1 minute of talking. And we got paid $5. And then I started doing, 16 minutes of juggling and 4 minutes of talking, and we got $8. And by the time we were out of high school, we were doing 3 minutes of juggling and 17 minutes of talking. And I just started weaseling my way into show business that way. But when people ask me my influences in magic, Teller will always answer Thurston and Houdini and Germain. He studied magic from the time he was 5 years old, and then he will bring in Hitchcock and Poe, But the influences I had on magic were Bob Dylan, Lenny Bruce, Kerouac. This is what I was completely immersed in.
Yeah.
The Mothers of Invention, Captain Beefheart. These are the people that I absolutely loved and adored and were so different from Greenfield, Massachusetts. So when I first started working with Teller and we were dealing with how to tell the truth, my sensibility was not that I'd grown up always wanting to do card fans. Mm-hmm. My sensibility was I was trying desperately to find some way, I wanted to be a musician, and I looked at the hand I was dealt, and I simply didn't have the talent. I don't have really good intonation. And also, there's what I call the Guns N' Roses problem, which is when you're starting Guns N' Roses and you love the Rolling Stones, as soon as you put on Sticky Fingers, why don't you disband Guns N' Roses? I wanted to be the Velvet Underground.
Yeah.
There was a Velvet Underground. I wasn't going to do it better.
Right.
I wasn't going to be better than Dylan. Just don't hold your breath till I win the Nobel Prize in Literature. Don't wait for that. So I would look and say, well, if I go into music, I'm going to be competing with Lou Reed, Frank Zappa, Brian Wilson, and Bob Dylan. I don't have a chance. If I go into magic, I'm going to be competing with Doug Henning and David Copperfield. I can kick their fucking asses. You have to look at what you're handed. If I was handed the hand that Bob Dylan was handed, I would be in music. But, in this, I'm able to carve out a little bit of a space for myself.
Right.
Teller also believes that you get interesting stuff out of people who don't belong in a field. And once again, I'll use the Guns N' Roses
Yeah, you kind of come in the back door.
If you're desperately trying to be the Stones, then the differences between Guns N' Roses are a wonderful band and great performers, but we've got the Stones, so it's all in the margins, the differences. Whereas if you come into something that you really don't like, Alfred Hitchcock once said, if you want to make movies, don't see movies that are great and say, I'm going to do that. See movies that are terrible and say, at least I won't do that. So Teller and I used to go to magic shows and say, here are the 10 things we hate from that show. These are 10 things we won't do.
Right.
And that seems like a really good way. People come up to me after the show sometimes and they'll say, I really hated this about your show. And I say something that I meant completely sincerely and from the heart, but it came out so snotty, I never found a way to say it with kindness. But the real thing I really feel is when someone comes up and says, I hate the blasphemy in your show. I hate the fact that you attack this kind of stuff. I go, well, that's good. Because when you do your show, don't do that. And I don't mean that snotty. I mean, that's exactly what I did. You know, I would sit there seeing Doug Henning, who, you know, before he died, we were friends. I respected him very much. When I was first deciding to create something, I would go see Doug Henning and go, I hate that, hate that, hate that, hate that, and then go home and write all night of how I could do a show that wouldn't.
Yeah.
That wouldn't do that. Salvador Dali, I used to be amazed when people would come up to us after a show and say, man, you know, I've seen David Copperfield and I've seen you guys, and you guys are all great. And I'd go, we're doing stuff so different from David Copperfield. And then I found this quotation from Salvador Dali that I will now mangle. I don't know it word for word. I didn't memorize it perfectly. But the way I remember it, which means I might have made it up. The way I remember it is Salvador Dali said, it is the artist's job to hate all other artists, but they must never be surprised when the audience doesn't.
Yeah.
And that's really, really important to me.
Yeah,
Now, these people that I'm saying I hated, you have to understand, I'm talking about the show, and I'm talking about very specifically for me. David Copperfield's a friend of mine. I mean, we hang out and stuff. And he knows very well that our acts are very different. And the stuff that I hated about his act and changed is the stuff he now hates about my act. And that's perfectly okay, you know? But that was part of the sensibility. We just wanted to take it. I mean, when I first watched Saturday Night Live, I hated the dope humor. I hated the fact that it had too loose a feel, that it wasn't tight-ass, they hadn't thought stuff out. Mm-hmm. And those were the things I was also trying to do different.
Yeah, yeah. So you had what you didn't want to do. You had like models for something that inspired you. You weren't going to be Bob Dylan, but he inspired you. So how did you translate that into the magic that you were going to do with Teller? Like, or, you know, the way that your show works, which some people have said is not really about magic, it's about ideas and about what we believe in and why we believe in things, like you were talking about earlier, the placebo effect, right? Like, why we can believe something even when we know it not to be true.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that Teller and I talked about, you know, and Teller was a high school Latin teacher, Latin Greek. Teller's older than I am, which is not important now. We're the same age now because we're both in our 60s. No, we are. I mean, that doesn't matter when you're in your 60s. Yeah. But when I started working with Teller, I was 18, and he was 25. And that's a big age difference.
Big difference.
It means he was teaching high school the whole time I was in it. Different high schools, but all the same. And we would sit for hours, and one of the questions we're trying to answer is, can you do a magic show without insulting people ever? And Jerry Seinfeld later said this after we've been thinking about this, but he said every magic show is, here's a quarter, now it's gone, you're a jerk, now it's back, you're an asshole, show's over. And we had a magician get mad at us once who said afterwards, whose side are you on? Meaning the audience or the magician's side.
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought about, you know, can you imagine Keith Richards saying to Eddie Van Halen, whose side are you on? Well, this is supposed to be, the relationship with the audience is not supposed to be adversarial. Even the Sex Pistols spitting on the audience, you know, and saying, how does it feel to be cheated? You know, all that stuff. That's not real. He doesn't really hate, there isn't really the adversarial position. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that Teller and I, how we composed everything, was comedians are constantly trying to find a universal. They're trying to find the thing that we all share. I shouldn't say comedians, also poets. I guess you could say all artists. We're trying to discover, and Nicholson Baker, my favorite author, does this all the time, trying to discover that little thing that we all share and we may not know we all share. Mm-hmm. That's where the beautiful thing is. And magicians take things that they know people know and deny they know them. The thing that Teller and I did that I think set us apart the most is that we were willing to use the word palm. Every layperson knows what palm means, to hold an object in your hand concealed. It's used all the time. Everybody knows that there are things called false shuffles. Everybody knows that a free choice of a card is sometimes not a free choice. Everybody in an audience had a magic set. And Teller and I just tried to start with where the audience really was. And we tried to say, this is what we share. And we are not saying, we know this and you don't, ha, ha, ha. Because while I was learning to handle a deck of cards, other people were learning to perform surgery and program a machine code and fix cars and stuff that some people consider to be valid. As valid as learning how to do a perfect Pharaoh shuffle. Some people think saving lives is as important as that. And so for me to come out and say, ha, 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 I can do this, you can't, is offensive. But for me to come out and say, you know, while you were doing all these wonderful things, I was also learning some of the glitches we have in our heads that make us believe stuff. And if two, idiots, one of which is college educated, the other got out of high school on a plea bargain. If these two people can make us question reality, it automatically has political, moral, and theological ramifications. And then, as we got older, I started, especially recently, to really fall in love with the kind of magic I didn't like as a child. And I've been learning and studying with a mentor of mine, Johnny Thompson, who's the greatest magician alive. He now comes over and gives me magic lessons, the ones that I would have gotten when I was 16. Because I really like that kind of finger-flinging stuff now that I've gone the other way. But I think our discovery of what we want to do in magic was just trying not to do stuff that I consider to be impolite.
Right. So as you said earlier, as you learned to be a performer of different kinds, you carved out, you said a small space. It's obviously a huge space. You do so many different things. You're a wonderful actor. I loved, one of my favorite movies is Tough Guys Don't Dance. And you actually, I love that.
Thank you.
And you're so great in it. It's a cameo, but it's wonderful. But you also, I was surprised. I didn't realize what a vast resume you have as a reality TV star, especially the celebrity versions, as you call them. You're very funny about the celebrity.
I've been on a lot of celebrity shows, including Celebrity Apprentice. I did 2 tours of duty.
2 tours. Actually, you know what? I think you did 3 because remember you got kicked out of the Trump casino and Penn and Gillette get killed?
Oh, yes,
so
we did.
You had that, maybe you weren't really with it.
Yeah, I have.
It carried you out.
Yeah, and so I have, perhaps, some people think I have secret information about Donald Trump.
Tell us.
Yeah. I think he is. One of the things that I find interesting about politics is I don't think we need hacked email servers. I don't think we need hot mics that are hidden. I think if we take the candidates at their absolute word and believe they are 100% honest and they will accomplish everything they say they're going to accomplish, there is nothing more damning. We have a candidate who said he will build a wall and he will throw people out of our country who are already living here among us and who are friends and neighbors and we love. We don't need anything else. We don't need a horrendous hot mic recording. That is appalling and he must not be president. Yes, I sat in rooms with him for hours and hours and hours. And the stuff that he said made me cringe. Now, I am a white man, and I am not qualified to talk about the fact that I cringe at things is different than the actual person who's been addressed. As a matter of fact, I rolled my eyes so loudly in the boardroom that Donald Trump took the habit of turning to me and saying, "That isn't sexist, is it, Penn?" To which I would reply, "I believe it's the textbook definition." But I have not spoken, and I want to make this really clear. I have not spoken about things that Donald Trump said in the boardroom, even though right afterwards I went and told friends, even though I was appalled and felt that it might be morally wrong for me to be on the show. Even with all of that, I will not, neither here nor in the press or anywhere, quote those things. Because I am a storyteller. And the way I remember things is in stories, which you can argue that's where we all remember, but I'm the worst at it. I pull things into a story, and I like telling a story, I like telling a joke, and I know for a fact, I've been tested, that my memory is not reliable. And I know that I will get exactly what I felt in my heart. I can tell you exactly what I felt in my heart. But that doesn't necessarily mean that what I recreate to tell that to you are the words that were said in the room. And the stakes are so, so high that I must not be busted. I must not, if you listen, which I guess we shouldn't listen to because it's not our right, but I did listen to it, the hot mic recording with Billy Bush. Every syllable of what Donald Trump says and how he says it is important. Because the word pussy is not offensive. What is offensive about that is the exact wording that says he does not care about consent. There's nothing wrong with sex. There's nothing wrong with obscenity. It's that exact little nuance. And if I were to report a nuance off even by that amount, to quote Bob Dylan, because I haven't done that yet and I need to every hour, Bob Dylan wrote, "Fearing not, I become my enemy in the instant that I preached." And if I want Donald Trump to tell the truth, I must tell the truth. So I will not report that, other than to say, which is my right, I was extremely uncomfortable in the room with things he said of a sexual nature and things he said racially. I was very uncomfortable with that, and that's all I can say in good conscience. But I think you can make all your decisions on Donald Trump without getting any information. I don't think you need the Billy Bush tape.
Right.
And, and for Hillary Clinton, I take her completely at her word. She is pro-death penalty. She is pro-war on drugs, and she is more of a hawk than Obama. And that's all I need to know on this. So I think that the political system, the whole country, has gotten much too cynical. We're always trying to look behind the curtain. In politics, we don't have to. Pretend they don't lie, and what you have is even more horrific.
Right. So take them at their word. So you're a libertarian, and your candidate, you were supporting Gary Johnson.
I was supporting Gary Johnson, and then a lot of people made the argument that Trump is not fit to be president, and that Nevada, where I live, is a swing state. And a bunch of people, now I didn't do vote swapping, because I know it's legal, and I've had the argument that it's moral, but it feels to me a little icky. So what I did was I said to a lot of my friends who live in New York, in California, in Massachusetts, I said to them, you guys have been telling me for 8 months that we mustn't let Donald Trump be president. And if that means going for the lesser of two evils, we must do that. And I have fought against you on that. And I have said, voting for the lesser of two evils will always get things more evil. And I've said that publicly, and I'm friends with Gary Johnson, and I've stumped for him a bit. I've interviewed him. But Nevada's a swing state, and you've made your point. And I'm going to go in. I've already voted, because you can early vote in Nevada. I'm going to go in and I'm going to vote for Hillary Clinton. And I'm not asking any of you to promise me that you will trade for me doing that. Because what you did it was not by saying you're going to do something you don't want to do. You did it by making a logical, rational argument that worked on me.
Right.
Now, I would like to turn that rational argument around and say the chances of Donald Trump winning California are 0.01%. You are pretty safe. I think that having a third person on the stage of the debates would have been really, really useful to us. And I'm not talking about spoilers. I'm not talking about game playing or your team winning. By the way, your team did win. Congratulations. But I'm not talking about this team winning. I'm talking about the idea that we want a larger marketplace of ideas. Mm-hmm. And please, if you think it was really, really important for me to vote for Clinton in Nevada, please vote for Gary Johnson or Jill Stein, who I disagree with on everything. But Jill, but really, because the Libertarian and the Green Party spent all their money and all their effort trying to get on the ballot in all 50 states. And if we get them 5% and they're on that automatically, then they can go out with their ideas. So I don't want to vote swap with anybody, but if you're in an area, and I was just talking to some Chicago friends today, who I won't mention because if anybody found out that he had decided to vote for Gary Johnson, they would beat him to death. But I have a couple friends who said, you made that point.
Okay, but here's my question for you, because, I mean, there's a lot of people dissatisfied with all of the candidates, right? I mean, there are people who support them as well. And
although I haven't met any of those.
Right. But, I mean, what didn't happen this year was we didn't get a third candidate in, and you could say, I'm not here to debate why or why not, I mean, get that person in the debate, but do you think that we're at the point where this system, such as it is, should be, as some people think, like the benefit of this election, which so many people find so horrid, is that it could kind of blow things up, that we should blow it up and start again? Or what's your take?
I think if I didn't know Donald Trump, I might have fallen a little bit for the burn it down philosophy. But the things that he said are so awful. I mean, by the way, Hillary Clinton is much too anti-immigration for my taste. Motherfucking Statue of Liberty says come, It says welcome. And I think that immigrants deserve to be here more than I do. They want to be here. I was born here. Very unpopular opinion, by the way. But I think that what I would like to see is the strongest thing I can say about Gary Johnson, who is a nut. The strongest thing I can say about Gary Johnson is that he's not running the campaign based on hate and fear. I was over Tony Fitzpatrick's this afternoon with some friends who I love as much as anyone in the world. And they were talking politics, as we so often are, just a few days out. And I said, can we just do a little bit of time and not talk about hate and fear? If Trump is elected, it's the end of the world. We hate those. And they were talking about these Trump supporters, these fucking nitwits, they were out there, they're gonna beat people up. They're Black Lives Matter, they were fighting those guys. And then, and I've heard the Trump people say this awful stuff. Yeah. And one monkey don't ruin the whole show. And the fact is, we are, not we Americans, we human beings, out of 7 billion people on the planet, around 7 billion are really good. And you can round it off to that. And things are getting better. We are getting safer. We are getting better fed. We are getting kinder to each other. That's happening. And the worst case scenario of Donald Trump being president, which would make me cry for 2 days, I have to understand would be okay in the long run because people are good. Right. And Hillary Clinton, who I disagree with, will be okay. All I would like is the next election cycle, I would like the arguments about ideas to be as mean and direct and honest and passionate as possible, but stop hating big groups of people. I just stopped doing it.
Yes, 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 yes. Well, let's turn to these good people. We want to get some of your questions in. So we have microphones on the ground floor. Raise your hand, and someone will bring you the mic.
Thank you for coming here. We really appreciate it. You are extremely articulate, and I think you know that, and you've developed that personality. Your partner, Teller, is extremely articulate as well, and you've identified that. How did you decide for him not to say a darn thing during your act?
I had nothing to do with it. Teller is very articulate. Teller is the better educated, probably the better speaker of the two of us. But Teller put himself through college doing magic at frat parties, which I've forgotten what circle of Dante's hell that is, but it's very close to the center. And Teller would be heckled very badly, as would by seeing someone like Teller doing magic at a frat party. Fuck you. And Teller found that if he didn't say anything and did things that were very creepy, people would grow tired of heckling him. He also got very interested with how you lie without speaking. And when I first met Teller, he was already doing magic. You know, in library basements as a teacher, you know, amateur. And he was already working silently. And I got him a gig because when I left high school, was homeless is too loaded a word, but I didn't live anywhere. I hitchhiked around the country. And I would juggle street corners and bars in between rock bands, and I was louder, more aggressive, and faster than anyone in the audience. That's what I worked on. When I first got Teller a job working together, we were two separate acts on the same bill. And so when we wanted to do stuff together, we had to maintain the integrity of the two solo acts. So we were forced to have Teller working silently in order not to hurt Teller's solo routine. And we discovered something, which is every comedy team you think of essentially works in this reference to the audience. Smothers Brothers, Nichols and May, Burns and Allen, Martin and Lewis. They talk to each other with the audience looking in, even if they're aware of the audience. You know, even though Tommy and Dickie are never in a different environment, they're talking to each other, they're doing it like this. And what Teller and I discovered was with Teller not talking, we could turn it face front. And we could essentially do a one-person show with two people. And we were fascinated by that because we started to be successful in the 80s. And in the 80s was when partnership, friendship, trust, and working together became known as codependence and were bad things. I don't think those are bad things. I think people working together and needing each other, that's a good thing. And there was one moment that was so symbolically perfect that it completely blew my mind. I was being interviewed in the early 90s, and the woman that came to interview me said she'd interviewed me before. And she said, I used to work for people, then I worked for us, and now I work for self. Teller and I wanted to buck that. So we're very proud of the fact that you can't really see how we would work in the show without one another, and yet we never look at each other. I think I make eye contact with Teller 3 times during a 90-minute show. And I think that makes us very, very different in how comedy teams work. But it was not our idea. We stumbled upon this. We're not smart enough to think of it.
He does look at you adoringly when you're doing interviews, though.
That's his job. Believe me, he doesn't feel that.
Here we go.
Hi. I saw Director's Cuts in Chicago, and I really loved it.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much.
And I wanted to ask if you could tell us a little bit about the new movie that you're making, where the Slammer is being destroyed, I thought.
Well, I've actually got 2 movies.
Yes.
There's a movie that I will finish as soon as I get back to Vegas called The Gamblers Ballad, which is about Johnny Thompson, my mentor, who's the best magician alive. And he spent the past 2 years teaching me the hardest routine he did. We did it together as a duet, and we did that as a little documentary. The one you're talking about is, I built a house in Vegas called the Slammer on 10 acres of land, not named after prison, but rather named after the level 5 containment unit at USAMRIID for infectious fatal diseases. Because when I went through there for the tour, because I happen to kind of have a hobby in infectious fatal diseases, they had a place that nobody could get to. You couldn't get to it. It was completely airlocked from the rest of the world. When people got like Ebola or something, they could put them in this room. And I said, wow, sometimes I just want to be like that. I want to be airlocked from the whole world so I can think. So I'm going to call my house the Slammer. And we built this gigantic house with fire poles and sex dungeons and hidden rooms. Strangely enough, the hidden rooms and the sex dungeons were 2 different places. Because worse things went on in the hidden room. Then I had a family, and my children are young, and it turns out children don't want to live in the middle of nowhere in a crazy house away from all their friends. They want to live in a gated community where they can walk to their friend's house and ride bicycles and stuff. So we bought another house, and the land that I built the Slammer on was now valuable, and the house itself, because it was built and designed by a crazy person, could not be sold. So I was going to sell the land, and they said they're going to tear down the Slammer. So I said, if you're going to tear it down, can I wreck it first? And they said, sure. And I said, okay. So I called a friend of mine, Adam Savage, who does a show called Mythbusters. Yeah. And I said, how would you destroy your house if you wanted to? Should I blow it up? And Adam Savage said, no, we've blown up a lot of shit. Why don't you drive a tank through it? And I said, can you do that? And he said, yeah, find a tank and drive it through. And I said, oh, good. So then I wrote a movie, a low-budget horror film that involved this sacred land that a cult was living on that a tank drives through. And then we spent 2 weeks shooting the movie, which is called The Grounds, where I play a cult leader, which is when I dyed my hair blonde. And I played a cult leader named Walt, after Disney, and a dangerous cult leader. And then we filmed the tank coming through my house. Yeah. So that's called The Grounds, and I hope someone likes it and it comes out. But if it doesn't, I drove a tank through my fucking house.
Right. You've already won. You've won. Yeah.
I'm sorry to say we have time for just one more question.
Oh.
I'm sorry, what'd I do wrong?
So you obviously have a wonderful array of imagination and opinions. We are now on the brink of a new generation of space travel, going to Mars, perhaps colonizing.
I'm too big to go.
What would you, what are your viewpoints on like a new planet, and how would you arrange a society on a whole new planet?
I'm in charge of this?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm not qualified.
You're the guy.
You're going
with the
to
tank.
Mars.
I'm the one that's going to colonize Mars? I've had a vasectomy. I'm not the guy. I don't know. I think we hit the singularity before that, and computers solve it for us. I think the singularity is coming.
So I'm going to sneak in one last question, because throughout this book there are references to many musicians, and you quote from many, but Bob Dylan is a recurring theme. You obviously have a great connection with him, and I just wanted to...
You mean Nobel laureate Bob Dylan?
Yeah, Nobel laureate. What do you think about Nobel laureate Bob Dylan?
Well, he was my 6th Nobel Prize winning friend. How was that?
That's pretty good. It means you're getting close.
Yeah. Although I don't think it's done like that.
No, I was just asking you, tell us about Bob and the Nobel and what you think about it all. And
well, there's this game that's played by all music snobs, which is, if you could go back in time and see one show, what would it be? Would it be Bach, performing on the keyboard? Would it be Stravinsky's Rite of Spring when people rioted? Would it be the Sex Pistols, their first time in London? Would it be the Beatles at Shea Stadium? I think if I were able to go back in time and see any single show, it would be Bob Dylan, the night in Las Vegas that he won the Nobel Prize. Wait a minute, I was there! All my dreams have come true now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank all of you.